a little bit to the law stuff now, so what we have like going on. So the before I open up, and I want to just go a couple of the subjects that we had before, which we talked about here. All right, so last time, remember we went through all the branches of government. We did the revocation of election, citizens arrest last week. We went through we haven't really touched too much on the citizenship. And I don't know if anybody is really interested in that. We did that like last year, was it, or the year before, where you really kind of go through, I guess we call status correction in a way. And I did prove that inside of the Santa Clara court. So I filed an action in Santa Clara court where when I went to go vote in the 2024 election, they wouldn't let me vote. And they let me vote. They let me vote. I got a ballot, right? So I'm not a registered voter and I'm not a U.S. citizen. So, I went in to vote and I said, look, I just need a ballot. Are you registered? No. I said, where do you live? I said, well, I'm a Californian. I'm a native. I'm a native Californian. So, I mean, I have a right to vote. So this is a California election, right? They're like, yeah. I was like, okay, give me a ballot then. So I voted on the election and I voted for President Trump and I just wanted to vote for him. That was it. I had one vote to make. And I gave it back to them because I hadn't voted since the recall on Newsom. And I was like, I gave up my voting 10 years ago, I think it was, when I did the whole revocation of the voting thing, because I thought that helped. So I went back in there and I said, you probably don't have me, in your system. I said, but I'll take one of those absentee ballots or whatever, same day voting. And it went in. And then, you get the little tracking and I'm tracking it every single day. And I'm like, okay, when's my vote going to be counted? Every day, 30 days go by. And there's a statute that says that they have a certain amount of time to count your vote. I think it's 30 days. So my vote never got counted. 30 days later, I said, okay, looks like it's not going to get counted. I called them. They said, yeah, we got some problems. So what is it? They wouldn't tell me. I said, well, what's the problem? They wouldn't tell me why my vote wasn't counted. And they, so I was like, fine, I'm filing a writ. So I filed a writ and I went and called in the Register of Voters of Santa Clara County. Now, I'm not a resident of Santa Clara. I'm not a resident. Okay. So, I know that that's a legal term, resident. This is the whole thing about status is all about legal words, right? You're either a resident or a U.S. citizen. I'm neither one of those. Where are you? Because they say, where do you live? I could tell you where I live. I live in my body. I'm alive right now. But resident is a legal word. That's a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen. That's what that means. So when they said residents, I was, I'm not a resident. So I'm not a resident of Santa Clara County. I just happened to be down there in San Jose that day on election day. So I went in there to the county recorder's office and I voted there. And so they took my ballot and I called the register of voters in. I brought her into I wanted a writ to issue. So I filed the writ, and a writ is just a petition that says, make him do his job or why he should not do it. And so that's all I had the court to do. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was just, I want you to tell the county recorder to come into this court and show you why I'm not allowed to vote. That's all. If I'm not allowed to vote, fine. But I need to know why, because they won't tell me why. And so she does it. She issues the writ. And I was like, freaking awesome, And it's a show cause. It's a show cause. Make them come in. So we come into court. I think Catherine was there that day with me, and she went in there, and I had the county recorder in there and talked to him for a while. And it was a show cause. So we showed up, and he says, yeah, look, this guy's not a U.S. citizen. And I said, right, I'm not a U.S. citizen. I said, so you can't vote. And they went through the statute. I said, okay, well, they issued the writ. They determined. So if I'm not a U.S. citizen, that's determined by this court now. That's all I wanted to know. That's all I wanted to determine. So obviously it's been determined now that I'm not a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen is voluntary. You can volunteer, to be a U.S. citizen. I didn't volunteer for that. So therefore, I didn't have a right to vote. If I don't have a right to vote, then you don't have a right to have any jurisdiction over me, period. Unless it's in California and California, because that's where we have two separate citizens. You got state citizen and federal citizen. Now, the federal citizen, that's going to be under the slaughterhouse cases. Remember the slaughterhouse cases, 1868, talk about the state citizen and federal citizen. There's two separate, complete citizens. And those people are under basically two separate sets of laws. But the Wong Kim Ark decision in 1890, that completely changed the whole landscape of citizenship. Now it made this overlay, and it made this feudal system, brought forward the feudal system to where you can volunteer in as a slave. They call it voluntary serfdom under the 13th Amendment. It's allowed. You can't be an involuntary serf, but you can be a volunteer serf. And then once you volunteer in, you you have the right to volunteer out. You cannot be. They will not. What I've experienced now, and I'm not going to make this claim without experiencing, but what I've experienced is they do recognize that you cannot be forced into servitude. They recognize that. I know it's frustrating because you get into that position, you think that you're forced into servitude, and you're just living on the manor and picking the daisies on the fields, and you're just frustrated because you just don't have any rights. But once you see that, wait a second, I don't have to volunteer for this. I don't need to be a serf. I can be a state citizen. And then they changed that to make it even more confusing. So in 1941, was it, when it went before went to Congress? So what happened was I went into the congressional record, and then I went into the old dictionaries at the time, and I pulled the dictionary. I bought a dictionary on eBay that was the dictionary in 1940, the Webster's dictionary in 1940. And that's important because that's the dictionary that they were using to define the words in Congress when they were writing this law, the Immigration and Nationality Act. And if anyone can guess the one word that I was trying to figure out what it meant, state. What did state mean? STATE, lowercase. That was the one word. What did that mean in 1941 when they passed the Immigration and Nationality Act? Because if I could figure out what that word meant, then that would then clarify everything for what the intent of the legislatures were at the time when they passed that law. And so, because what it says is that a national, lowercase national, is a person who owes a permanent allegiance to a small s state. And that's under the Immigration and Nationality Act. So I thought, well, what's this word national and all this? I looked into that, and that turned out that word means it's a person who is a state. A state is like California, like a nation of a sovereign state. All these independent nations, which are California, Indiana, all these different states. That's what a state is, small s. Now, there are large s states, and there are international states. There's foreign states as well, and they've defined that in the code as well. So I know people who haven't read into it enough, they get a little frustrated because they say, well, state, that means a foreign country. Well, no, there's definitions for that as well. They're called foreign states. Or large s state could be different, but the small s state was the key. And then once I figured that out, then it was like, okay, I'll be a national under the small s state of California. And that was, now I wouldn't say it just gave me clarity. It didn't really give me any benefit. I would say, like, I didn't make any money from that. So if you're looking to make money off of that it's not going to make you any money. I'm sorry to say. So I guess that's kind of the frustrating part, right? So you think you're going to get money from it or something, and you don't. So, it's not really that's something that is really great for everybody because they may need money, and it doesn't help with that. But I mean, and it won't help you win a court case either. So it's not gonna help you win your court case. So don't think it will. But it just, I guess for me, it was just closure. I wanted closure on that, issue. I guess the only thing it gave me was a basis for the revocation of election in a way, but I didn't need that to do the revocation of election. It wasn't necessary because the revocation of election is just a non-resident alien, not a state citizen or a national. It's a non-resident alien. So it's two separate things completely. So that's yeah, so those are just some of the topics I wanted to cover on the let's see, state citizen versus federal citizen. I did have a court insatisfaction complaint that I'm doing right now that hit a wall. So I'm holding off on it until I could figure it out. I'm trying to bring a 1060 action for an court insatisfaction, and it's just I'm hitting the wall on it. So I'm not doing it until I figure it out. But how to write a complaint is another idea. We talked about that. We talked about, what was it? Power of attorney. I know Sabrina wanted to know about power of attorney, and I'm just looking back at my notes. And I'm thinking, like, the only benefit of the POA, I guess, is for estate planning. I guess would be good for estate planning. So but yeah, it's a estate planning thing, so it could be good for that. But the Probate Missing Persons Act, I have that on my agenda. It's something that we could talk about. Chris is here, I think, so he's the master in probate. And then 1983 suits as well. Really good to learn about 1983 suits. We should talk about that in detail and go through how to do a 1983 suit. Consumer law. Oh my gosh, Catherine, if you're on the call, Catherine's kicking butt in consumer law right now. I won a consumer case. I did a couple consumer cases a few years back, and it's the easiest form of law. It's the most harmonious and simple. It's designed for consumers, just regular people, the least sophisticated consumer. And so when you bring it, you actually, wow, you get recognized. And you could bring it in state court. You don't have to bring it in federal court. And then if they want to remove it, they can. But it's usually against a debt collector or a credit reporting agency or somebody that's harassing you in business. And you're a consumer and you have all these rights. You have a lot of rights as a consumer, massive amount of rights. So consumer law is a way to make money against these debt collectors or harm doers. Usually it's debt collectors is what it is, or some sort of an entity that's just harassing you. Um, 508s and churches and nonprofits and UAs and all that. We've talked about a lot about that, but yeah, I just wanted to share the story of the Shroud of Turin because it's so relevant right now, and how it's completely changed my life now, and on basically my crystallized that the process is real. So that's my 2 minutes, I guess, or more than that, whatever you want to call it, my opening. So I wanted to open up. So let's go from there. Thomas, over to you, buddy. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good.